The air in the Vale of Whispering Roots always felt like a soft sigh. It wasn't quite night, nor truly day, but a perpetual luminous twilight, woven from the starlight filtering through the ancient canopy and the gentle hum of the earth itself. Lyra knew no other way of being. Her world was a tapestry of emerald and amethyst, where mosses glowed with an inner light, and the oldest trees held secrets whispered in rustling leaves. Lyra, with hair the color of dawn and eyes the deep green of the Vale's oldest glades, moved through this softened world with a quiet grace. Today, her task was to tend the moon-petal lilies that bloomed by the sunken spring. These weren't ordinary lilies. Their petals, translucent as spun moonlight, only unfurled when touched by a specific frequency of sound, a melody, a gentle hum, or a whispered wish. Lyra had learned the lily song from Ilara, her guardian, whose voice was like the murmur of river stones. Humming the low, resonant notes, Lyra knelt beside the spring. The water here was so clear it seemed to be woven from air, reflecting the shimmering canopy above like a liquid mirror. As her song rippled through the air, a faint tremor ran through the lily buds. One by one they began to unfurl, revealing delicate stamens that pulsed with a faint, silver light. A sweet ethereal perfume drifted through the air, a scent Lyra associated with peace and the deep magic that cradled their home. The Vale of Whispering Roots was more than just a beautiful place. It was a sanctuary, protected by something Ilara called the Aegis. Lyra didn't fully understand what the Aegis was, only that it was ancient, powerful, and the very reason the gloom, a chill and formless dread from beyond the veil, could not touch them. The Aegis manifested as the eternal twilight, the vibrant, ceaseless life, and the profound sense of safety that permeated every root and leaf. It was a warmth in the air, a hum in the earth, a sparkle in the water. It was home. As the last moon-petal lily opened, its light mingling with the dappled starlight, Lyra noticed something amiss. One of the lily pads, usually a vibrant, velvety green, had a faint, almost imperceptible grayish tinge around its edge. It was tiny, no bigger than her thumbnail, but it was there. Lyra frowned. The plants in the Vale were never anything but perfect, perpetually renewed by the Aegis's embrace. A gray edge was unheard of. She gently touched the discolored pad. It felt cool, almost faintly brittle, beneath her finger, a stark contrast to the supple warmth of its brethren. A shiver, not of cold but of unease, traced its way up her arm. She tried to sing the lily song again, a little louder, a little more insistent, but the gray patch remained, stubbornly refusing to yield to the magic. "Flicker," she whispered, her voice barely audible. A tiny spark of sapphire light detached itself from a nearby glow moss, flitting towards her. Flicker was a lumina, a creature of pure light and curiosity, her constant companion since she was a toddler. It zipped around her head, its small bright form leaving shimmering trails in the air, then settled on her shoulder, pulsing softly. "Do you see it?" Lyra pointed to the lily pad. Flicker zoomed in, circling the offending spot, its sapphire light dimming slightly, as if sensing the discordant energy. It emitted a series of soft, high-pitched clicks, a sound Lyra understood to mean unusual or not right. "It feels cold," Lyra murmured, withdrawing her hand. "The Vale is never cold." Flicker darted off her shoulder, hovering over the lily pad for a moment longer, then zipped towards the edge of the sunken spring, where the ancient roots of a gigantic moss-draped willow dipped into the water. Its light flickered with urgency, a silent summons. Lyra followed, her brow furrowed. Flicker rarely showed such alarm. The willow, known as the Weeping Sentinel, was one of the oldest trees in the Vale, its branches vast and gnarled, its leaves a cascade of shimmering silver. It was said that the Weeping Sentinel had seen the Aegis woven, millennia ago, and remembered the world before its protection. Lyra had always felt a quiet strength emanating from its presence. But as she approached with Flicker, she felt a different sensation. The air beneath the willow's lowest branches felt thin, almost hollow. The glow moss that usually carpeted its roots was duller here, its emerald light muted. Flicker, now hovering near a cluster of roots, pulsed rapidly, its sapphire light flickering like a distant star. Lyra pushed aside a curtain of silvery leaves. What she saw made her breath catch. A small patch of the Weeping Sentinel's bark, about the size of her palm, was not its usual rich, textured brown. It was utterly, completely gray. Not merely discolored, but drained of all life, dry and brittle, like old ash. It looked as if a tiny piece of the gloom had seeped into the very heart of the veil. Lyra reached out, her hand trembling slightly. The bark was cold, truly cold, and when her finger brushed against it, a small fragment crumbled away, turning to dust in the air. This was more than just a discolored leaf. This was a wound. Flicker let out a plaintive series of chirps, darting around the gray patch, its light trying in vain to infuse warmth back into the dead wood. "We have to tell Elara," Lyra whispered, a knot tightening in her stomach. This was serious. This was a disturbance in the Aegis, a crack in their perfect protected world. Leaving the sunken spring, Lyra hurried through the glowing glades, Flicker a worried beacon beside her. The usual gentle hum of the veil, a soothing presence, now seemed to carry a faint discordant note, like a string out of tune. The air, usually so soft and comforting, felt subtly cooler on her skin. She reached Elara's dwelling, a dwelling not built, but grown, from the living wood of 3 ancient intertwined trees. Vines heavy with luminous berries draped across its openings, and the air around it always smelled of warm earth and rare herbs. Elara herself was a creature of the veil, her skin like polished amber, her hair a cascade of white woven with strands of living moss, and eyes that held the wisdom of countless seasons. She was old, older than any other living being Lyra knew, and her connection to the Aegis ran deeper than roots into the earth. Elara was seated by her hearth, where a fire of glowing embers fueled by sunstones cast worn shifting patterns on the walls. She was weaving a basket from moon reeds, her fingers nimble and sure. She didn't look up immediately, but a faint smile touched her lips. "Lyra," she said, her voice a low, resonant melody, "you carry a heavy concern in your heart tonight. What troubles the quiet of your spirit?" Lyra knelt beside her, Flicker settling on Elara's shoulder, its light still agitated. "Ella, something is wrong. At the sunken spring, a moonpetal lily pad was gray, and then the weeping sentinel. There's a gray patch on its bark, cold and brittle." Elara's weaving stilled. She slowly raised her head, her ancient eyes, usually sparkling with gentle amusement, now clouded with a profound sadness. She reached out, her hand resting on Lyra's cheek. Her touch was warm, comforting, yet Lyra felt the tremor in her fingers. "You have keen eyes, little one," Elara said softly. "Keener than I had hoped, for this." "What is it?" Lyra asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Is it the gloom? Has it found a way in?" Elara sighed, a sound like dry leaves rustling. She looked at Flicker, whose light was now dim and trembling. "The gloom has not found a way in, Lyra, but it presses against the Aegis always. And the Aegis, it is weary." Lyra's eyes widened. "Weary? But it's the Aegis. It protects us. It's always been here. And it has always drawn its strength from the Heartstone, deep beneath the veil," Elara explained, her voice gaining a storyteller's cadence. "A gem of pure living light, placed there by the first weavers, those who spun the very fabric of our world. For millennia, the Heartstone pulsed, its light radiating outward, forming the Aegis, a living shield against the creeping cold of the world beyond." Elara gestured vaguely towards the edge of the veil, where the perpetual twilight seemed to deepen into an impenetrable indigo. "But the world outside grows colder, Lyra. The gloom strengthens. It is not an evil in itself, not a beast or a sorcerer, but an absence, a decay, a slow forgetting of warmth and light. And as it grows, the Aegis must work harder to hold it at bay." She picked up a small, smooth riverstone from a pile beside her. "Imagine the Aegis as a magnificent ancient tree. Its roots are the Heartstone, its trunk the magic that flows, its branches the protection that shelters us. But if the soil around its roots grows barren, if the rain cease to fall, even the greatest tree will weaken. The Heartstone's light, it is fading." Lyra felt a chill deeper than the one from the weeping sentinel's bark. "Fading? What does that mean for us, for the veil?" "It means the symptoms you observe will grow," Elara said gravely. "The warmth will lessen, the glow moss will dim, the life force of the veil will recede. And if the Aegis fails completely, the gloom will consume us. not with fire or storm, but with silence, with cold, with an endless gray stillness. Lyra hugged her knees, feeling a sudden, immense fear. The veil was all she knew, all she loved. The thought of it becoming gray and still was unbearable. But, can't we stop it? Can't we help the Aegis? Elara looked at her with an intensity that made Lyra feel as if she were seeing right into her soul. That, little one, is the very question I have pondered for many seasons, and I believe, yes, we can. But it will require courage, and a journey into places long forgotten, even within our own protected lands. A journey? Lyra echoed, a flicker of apprehension and excitement stirring within her. She had never left the sunken spring or the central glades of the Vale. Her world was beautiful, but small. The first weavers in their infinite wisdom knew that even the most powerful protection could wane, Elara continued. They left behind a safeguard, a way to rekindle the Aegis, to restore the Heartstone's light. It is called the Echo Gem. The Echo Gem? Lyra repeated, the name sounding like something from an old legend. It is said to be a fragment of the original Heartstone, imbued with its pure uncorrupted light, Elara explained. But it was hidden, long ago, in a place only accessible when the Aegis itself began to falter, when its need was greatest. A place known as the Whispering Spire. Lyra knew of the Whispering Spire, though she had never seen it. It was a peak of pale crystalline rock, rising high above the densest canopy, far to the north of the sunken spring. It was shrouded in mist and legend, a place whispered about in hushed tones, said to be home to ancient spirits and forgotten lore. No one ventured there. The Whispering Spire is perilous, Elara warned, her voice soft but firm. Its paths are veiled, its air thin, its guardians discerning, but the Echo Gem is there, and it holds the key to rejuvenating the Aegis. But why me? Lyra asked, her voice small. Why not you? You are wise, Elara. Elara smiled, a gentle, knowing smile. My roots are too deep, Lyra. My time for such journeys has passed. The Aegis requires a new light, a fresh spirit, a heart unburdened by the weight of millennia. And you, Lyra, you possess those qualities. You are observant, kind, and you carry a spark of the Vale's own magic within you. You are young, but your connection to this place is profound. She reached for a small leather-bound book from a shelf beside her, its pages brittle with age. This tome contains fragments of the first weaver's lore. It speaks of the spire, and holds the first clue to finding the Echo Gem. But the path will not be revealed easily. You will need to listen, Lyra, to the whispers of the spire itself. Lyra took the book. Its leather felt cool and smooth beneath her fingers, and a faint, sweet scent of dried flowers emanated from its pages. It was much heavier than it looked. And you will not be alone, Elara added, looking at Flicker, who chirped happily, zooming around Lyra's head. Flicker will guide you where the light is dimmest, and warn you of shadows, and I will guide you from here, with my thoughts and my magic, reaching out to you across the distances. Lyra looked at the ancient book, then at Flicker, then back at Elara. The fear was still there, a cold knot in her stomach, but it was now mingled with a growing sense of purpose, a strange thrill of destiny. The thought of venturing into the unknown, even within the protective embrace of the Vale, was daunting. But the image of the gray, withered bark of the weeping sentinel, and the fading light of the moon-petal lily, solidified her resolve. She couldn't let the Aegis fade. She couldn't let the Vale become still and cold. I will go, she said, her voice stronger than she expected. I will find the Echo Gem. Elara's smile deepened, a flicker of ancient pride in her eyes. Then you must prepare. Gather your courage, Lyra, for the journey to the Whispering Spire begins at dawn's first true light, and the fate of the Aegis rests upon your shoulders. Lyra spent the remainder of the twilight preparing. She packed a small satchel with dried sunberries for sustenance, a canteen of water from the purest spring, and a small pouch of glow moss to light her way in the deepest shadows. Elara gave her a simple silver pendant, shaped like a single, unfurled moon-petal lily. This is not a weapon nor a shield, Elara told her, fastening it around Lyra's neck. It is a token of the Aegis, a reminder of the life you seek to protect. It will hum softly when you are close to true magic, and grow warm when the Vale's heart calls to yours. As Lyra lay on her moss bed, the gentle hum of the veil usually lulled her to sleep instantly. Tonight, it felt different. It was still comforting, but now she could detect the subtle strain within its melody. The faint, almost imperceptible dissonance she hadn't noticed before. Her hand instinctively went to the silver lily pendant. It felt cool against her skin, a promise and a challenge. Flicker settled on her pillow, its sapphire light casting soft, dancing shadows on the walls. Lyra opened the ancient book Ilara had given her. The pages were filled with strange, elegant script and intricate drawings of swirling patterns and ancient symbols. She couldn't understand most of the words, but one illustration caught her eye. A towering, ethereal spire wreathed in mist, and at its base, a small glowing symbol that seemed to pulse with a faint light even from the drawing. She traced the symbol with her finger, a ripple of quiet determination spreading through her. The Whispering Spire. A place of mystery, of ancient secrets, and now, her destination. The thought of venturing into the unknown was daunting, but the image of the gray, wilting lily, the cold, brittle bark, spurred her onward. She would go. For the veil, for the Aegis, for her home. With Flicker nestled beside her, its light a comforting presence, Lyra closed her eyes, ready for the true light of dawn, and the beginning of her quest. The silent promise of the Aegis, the protection she had always taken for granted, now rested fragile and precious in her hands. And she, Lyra of the Whispering Roots, was ready to become its guardian. The first rays of dawn, usually a vibrant painting of gold and rose across the sky, felt muted, a watercolor washed thin by a creeping gray. Lyra opened her eyes to the familiar patterns of her sleeping chamber, but her gaze lingered on the small, smooth stone she held in her hand, the Aegis stone, its surface now cool and faintly dull. Flicker, sensing her awakening, stirred from its nest of dried moss, and emitted a soft warm glow, chasing away the last shadows of night from the room. Quietly, Lyra rose. The air outside was still, holding its breath before the day truly began. She moved with a practiced softness, her bare feet silent on the woven rush mats. She glanced at the wilting lily on her windowsill, its once vibrant petals now a fragile, dusty gray, and felt a fresh surge of resolve. This wasn't just a quest, it was a desperate plea from the heart of her home. No elaborate farewells were needed, or even possible. Her mission was a secret, known only to the eldest root, the ancient guardian of the veil, and now, to Flicker. She picked up her small satchel, filled with dried berries, a water skin, a compass carved from petrified wood, and a small smooth stone of healing herbs. Her simple cloak, woven from the resilient fibers of the Whispering Roots themselves, felt like a second skin, providing both warmth and camouflage. With Flicker hovering protectively beside her, its soft light illuminating the path directly before them, Lyra slipped out of her home, and into the hushed lanes of the sleeping village. The houses, carved into the boles of ancient trees, seemed to slumber deeply. She passed the great hearth, where the community gathered for stories and warmth, and the root weaver's workshop, where the intricate baskets and tools of the veil were crafted. Everything felt precious, vulnerable. Reaching the edge of the veil where the protective embrace of the Aegis was strongest, Lyra paused. The boundary was marked by a grove of particularly ancient, towering sentinels, trees whose bark glowed faintly with the Aegis's power. She laid a hand upon the nearest trunk. Usually a vibrant pulse would greet her, a faint hum of energy running through her fingertips. Today, it was weaker, a slow, tired beat, like an old heart struggling to keep rhythm. A shiver, not of cold but of profound sadness, traced its way down her spine. "We will make it right," she whispered, her voice barely audible. A silent promise to the ancient tree, and to the fading magic. Stepping beyond the sentinels, she entered the Whispering Woods, the sprawling forest that surrounded the veil. This was not the dark, foreboding wilderness of travelers' tales, but a place of gentle giants and rustling secrets, familiar from countless childhood forays. Yet, even here, the change was subtly evident. The green seemed less saturated, the air less sweet with the scent of pine and damp earth. The cheerful chirping of daybirds was subdued, replaced by the occasional, hesitant call. Flicker's glow intensified slightly, as if sensing her apprehension. "It's all right, little friend," Lyra murmured, reaching out a hand for the sprite to alight on her finger. Its warmth was a tangible comfort. "We just need to remember everything the eldest root taught us." She followed a faint deer trail, winding deeper into the woods, heading generally west, towards the sunken glade, the first waypoint the eldest root had mentioned. It was a place of ancient mosses and slow-moving streams, rarely visited by the folk of the Vale. Lyra had only been there once, as a child, on a foraging trip. She remembered the feeling of immense quiet, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and the distant murmur of water. As the sun climbed higher, filtering through the dense canopy in shifting patterns of light and shadow, Lyra maintained a steady pace. She listened, not just with her ears, but with the deeper intuitive sense that had earned her the name Lyra of the Whispering Roots. She felt for the telltale hum of healthy life, the subtle vibration of roots beneath the earth, the gentle conversations of leaves in the breeze. Today, those conversations were quieter, more hesitant. There was a faint, almost imperceptible discord in the forest symphony, a note held too long, a harmony gone slightly flat. She paused by a small stream, its water usually crystal clear and teeming with tiny darting fish. Now, the water seemed a touch murky, and the fish were fewer, slower. A patch of watercress on the bank, usually vibrant green, showed faint streaks of yellow, almost like a bruise. Lyra knelt, dipping her fingers in the cool water. It felt strangely thin, lacking its usual vitality. "The blight is spreading," she whispered to Flicker, her heart sinking a little further. "Even here, so close to home." Flicker pulsed mournfully in response. Lyra took a deep breath, trying to steady her resolve. She was not a healer, nor a powerful sorceress. She was just Lyra, a gatherer of herbs, a quiet listener to the forest. But the eldest root had chosen her, and she would not falter. The path grew less distinct as the day wore on. The trees here were older, their roots forming intricate, gnarled networks above ground. Lyra had to climb over some, squeeze between others. The air grew cooler, heavier with moisture, signaling her approach to the sunken glade. Finally, as twilight began to paint the sky in hues of lavender and deep blue, Lyra descended into a hollow, a natural basin cradled by ancient, moss-covered hills. This was the sunken glade. Giant ferns, taller than herself, unfurled like prehistoric wings, and the ground was a soft, springy carpet of emerald moss. The air here was thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, but also something else, a faint, sweet, ethereal perfume that suggested ancient magic. Suddenly Flicker darted forward, its light illuminating a patch of particularly vibrant, phosphorescent moss. As Lyra drew closer, she realized the moss was not just glowing, but shifting, its patterns slowly swirling, like currents in a liquid pool. Then faint, almost imperceptible whispers began to rise from the moss, not in any language she knew, but in a series of soft sighs and murmurs that resonated deep within her spirit. These were the moss whispers, creatures of pure forest essence, rarely seen, even more rarely heard by human ears. The eldest root had spoken of them as the memory keepers of the deep woods, ancient and wise. Lyra knelt, closing her eyes, and reached out with her senses, trying to attune herself to their subtle communication. She felt a profound sadness emanating from them, a grief that settled like a cold stone in her chest. The breath of the forest falters, the heartwood sickens. The whispers seemed to weave directly into her mind, not words, but feelings and images. She saw a vision of a great ancient tree, its roots reaching deep into the earth, but its leaves slowly turning to dust. It was the Aegis, personified. "I have come to help," Lyra projected her thoughts, her voice a silent echo in the moss. "The Aegis, it withers. How can I save it?" The moss shifted more rapidly, and the whispers intensified, weaving a complex tapestry of sensations. The source, the wellspring, tainted by the Shadow Veil. Shadow Veil. The eldest root had spoken of it, a creeping darkness that sought to drain the life force from places of power. It was not a physical entity, but a pervasive, insidious magic, a blight of the spirit. Zeke. The moon lamps. Beyond the whispering river. They see what others cannot. What grows in the twilight. The whispers faded, leaving Lyra with a profound sense of urgency. The moon lamps. She remembered the eldest root mentioning them once. Luminous insects that lived near the great whispering river, said to be sensitive to hidden energies and unseen dangers. They were elusive, shy creatures, But perhaps they held the key to understanding the shadow veil and finding its source. She spent the night in the sunken glade, wrapped in her cloak, flicker glowing softly beside her. The ancient mosses seemed to offer a measure of protection, a temporary respite from the creeping blight. She dreamt of wilting lilies and brittle bark, but also of a faint, persistent glow in the distance, a beacon of hope. With the first light of morning, Lyra rose, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. The moss whispers had given her a direction, a next step. She thanked the glowing mosses silently, feeling a ripple of gentle acknowledgement in return, and began her trek out of the glade. The journey to the Whispering River was arduous. The terrain grew rougher, the forest denser. She encountered patches where the blight had taken a firmer hold, trees with blackened leaves, their branches brittle and snapping underfoot, the very ground feeling lifeless and cold. Lyra navigated these areas carefully, her stomach clenching with each step. Flicker's light seemed to recoil from these blighted zones, dimming slightly, and Lyra felt a prickling sensation on her skin, a sense of unease. She relied on her instinct and the occasional faint trail left by forest creatures. Days blurred into a rhythm of walking, foraging for edible berries and roots, though even these seemed less abundant and vibrant than usual, and finding shelter under ancient roots or in hollowed-out logs. Her simple waterskin, refilled from dwindling streams, was her most precious possession. One afternoon, as she was navigating a particularly dense thicket, she heard it, the distant, rhythmic murmur of water, growing steadily louder. The Whispering River. A rush of relief washed over her. She pushed through the last curtain of vines and emerged onto a wide, pebbled bank. Before her, the Whispering River flowed, broad and majestic, its surface a swirling tapestry of greens and blues. It wasn't a roaring torrent, but lived up to its name, its currents creating a constant, low hum, like a million soft voices murmuring secrets. Ancient, gnarled willows lined its banks, their drooping branches almost touching the water, as if listening intently to its tales. The air here felt different, fresher, cleaner, as if the river itself resisted the blight's touch. Lyra drank deeply from its cool, clear waters, feeling a surge of energy revitalize her weary body. But where were the moon lamps? The moss whispers had said they saw what grows in the twilight. She would have to wait for nightfall. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples, Lyra settled down by the riverbank, Flicker nestled in her lap. The twilight deepened, and a faint silvery mist began to rise from the water, swirling around the willow branches. Then, she saw them. First, just a few, like scattered pinpricks of light, barely brighter than distant stars. But then more appeared, rising from the mist, drifting from the willow branches, emerging from the tall reeds along the bank. They were small, delicate creatures, no bigger than her thumb, with translucent wings that shimmered like spun moonlight. Each carried a tiny internal glow, a soft ethereal luminescence that pulsed gently. These were the moon lamps. They danced in the twilight, weaving intricate patterns in the air, their combined light creating a soft, shifting curtain of magic over the river. Lyra watched, mesmerized, feeling a profound sense of peace wash over her. She saw several of them alight on a patch of river moss, and as they did, the moss itself began to glow with a faint sympathetic light. Remembering the moss whisper's advice, Lyra slowly extended her hand, palm open, offering a small, dried berry she had saved. She focused her intent, projecting a silent question. I seek knowledge of the shadow veil. I must find its source, to save the Aegis. One of the moon lamps, bolder than the rest, detached itself from the dancing swarm, and drifted closer. It hovered before her face, its light pulsing rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. Then, to her astonishment, it landed gently on her outstretched finger. Its light seemed to intensify, and Lyra felt a delicate buzzing sensation, not of sound, but of pure insight. Images flooded her mind, clearer and more precise than the moss whisper's murmurs. She saw a vast sprawling network of roots, far beneath the earth, radiating out from a central point. But instead of vibrant energy flowing through them, she saw a slow, insidious drain, like 1,000 tiny siphons drawing power away. And at the heart of this drain she saw a place, a cavern deep underground, wreathed in perpetual twilight, where the air itself seemed to crackle with a cold, hungry energy. The moon lamp pulsed again, and the image shifted. She saw the familiar gray of the wilting lily, the brittle bark. But then she saw something else. Shadowy tendrils, like wisps of smoke, reaching out from the cavern, attaching themselves to the very roots of the world, slowly, patiently, drawing out their vitality. This was the shadow veil, not just a blight, but a parasitic entity, a hungry void. The moon lamp then showed her a path, not on the surface, but a deeper one. It was a faint, almost forgotten trail leading away from the river, towards a range of jagged, dark hills visible in the distance. The gloomthorns guard the ancient path. The moon lamp conveyed the thought impression sharper and more urgent than before. Beyond them, the Whisper Mouth Caverns, where the veil begins. The Whisper Mouth Caverns. The name sent a shiver down Lyra's spine. It sounded like a place where secrets were swallowed whole. As swiftly as it had come, the moon lamp lifted from her finger, joining its brethren in their shimmering dance. Their collective light seemed to dim slightly, and Lyra understood. They had given her what they could. The rest was up to her. She spent another night by the whispering river, the moon lamp's dance a comforting if melancholic spectacle. The images they had shown her replayed in her mind, the draining roots, the hungry shadow veil, the distant, ominous whisper-mouth caverns. Her quest was becoming clearer, but also infinitely more daunting. The next morning, Lyra felt a grim determination. She knew where she had to go, even if the path was fraught with danger. The Gloomthorns were legendary in the Vale, not as creatures, but as a region, a place where the forest itself seemed to turn against travelers. It was a place of shadows and tangled thickets where the plants grew twisted and aggressive, their thorns sharper, their shadows deeper. It was said that the Gloomthorns were themselves touched by a lingering darkness, remnants of ancient battles or forgotten curses. Following the moonlamp's ethereal guidance, Lyra struck out from the river, heading towards the dark, brooding hills. The landscape began to change rapidly. The vibrant greens of the riverside gave way to darker, duller hues. The trees grew closer together, their branches intertwining into a thorny, impenetrable wall. The air grew heavy, still, and strangely cold, even under the morning sun. Soon, she entered the domain of the Gloomthorns. Here, the forest was a labyrinth of twisted blackened branches and grasping vines. The thorns were everywhere, long, needle-sharp barbs that snaked from every branch, every leaf, even from the ground itself. They seemed to shimmer with a faint, malevolent energy, and Lyra could feel their subtle pull, a creeping sense of exhaustion and despair radiating from them. Flicker, usually bright and cheerful, now glowed with a subdued, anxious light, occasionally flickering wildly as if disturbed by an unseen presence. Lyra had to move with extreme caution, her cloak catching on thorns, leaving faint snags. She pulled it tighter around her, hoping its weave of whispering root fibers would offer some protection. This wasn't just physical obstruction. The Gloomthorns seemed to prey on the spirit. Lyra felt a growing sense of hopelessness, a chilling doubt about her abilities. What was she, a simple gatherer, against such a pervasive darkness? The Aegis was too grand, too important for her to save. The odds were insidious, whispering at the edges of her mind, trying to drain her will. But then she remembered the wilting lily, the brittle bark, the fading pulse of the sentinel tree. She remembered the eldest root's calm, unwavering gaze. She remembered her promise. No, Lyra whispered, her voice firm despite the tremor in her heart. I will not give up. She focused on her connection to the earth, the innate empathy she shared with plants. She reached out, not with her hands but with her spirit, trying to understand the Gloomthorns. She felt their anger, their pain, their twisted, corrupted essence. They were not evil inherently but sick, poisoned by the very shadow veil she sought to defeat. She found that by concentrating, by offering a silent plea to the plants, she could make their thorns retract ever so slightly, just enough for her to squeeze through. It was slow, agonizing work, requiring immense focus and draining her own energy. But it worked. Inch by painful inch, she made her way through the thorny maze. Flicker, sensing her struggle and her unwavering resolve, began to pulse with a stronger, warmer light. Its glow seemed to create a small protective bubble around Lyra, pushing back the oppressive gloom radiating from the thorns. Where Flicker's light touched the thorns, they seemed to recoil, their sharp points dulling momentarily. She traveled for what felt like an eternity, the sun a mere memory above the tangled canopy. The air grew colder, and the faint, acrid scent of decay became stronger. Just as she felt her resolve beginning to truly fray, Flicker darted ahead, its light suddenly shining brighter, piercing through the dense thicket. Before them, the gloom thorns parted, revealing a narrow, ancient pathway. It was barely visible, overgrown with moss and shadowed by leaning trees, but it was unmistakably a path, carved by hands long past. The stones beneath her feet were smooth, worn by countless journeys. This was the ancient path. Relief washed over Lyra, so potent it almost brought her to her knees. She had found it. The path promised by the moon lamps, the way past the gloom thorns. She stepped onto the ancient stones, feeling a faint, almost imperceptible hum of forgotten magic beneath her feet. This path was old, older than the veil itself, perhaps even older than the Aegis, a relic of a time when the world was raw and magic flowed more freely. The ancient path led upward, winding its way through the hills, the gloom thorns still pressing in on either side, but no longer directly blocking her way. As she ascended, the air grew even colder, and a strange metallic scent began to mingle with the damp earth. The trees thinned, replaced by jagged dark rock faces that loomed overhead. Then, she saw it. Nestled in a deep fissure in the highest peak, partially obscured by clinging, sickly gray vines, was a gaping maw in the rock. It was not a natural cave opening, but seemed carved, or perhaps eroded by ancient magic, into the shape of a colossal, silent scream. Dark, still air seemed to emanate from its depths, carrying that faint metallic tang and a chilling sense of emptiness. There was no light within, only an impenetrable blackness that seemed to swallow Flicker's glow at its very edge. This was it. The Whisper Mouth Caverns. The place where the shadow veil began. Lyra stood before it, feeling the full weight of her quest press down on her. The air around the cavern entrance felt heavy, oppressive, as if the very joy had been sucked out of it. She could feel the subtle drain, the insidious pull of the shadow veil, even from here. It was a hunger, vast and ancient, seeking to consume all life, all light. A voice, not from without, but from deep within her own mind, spoke, clear as a bell despite the crushing gloom. You have found the threshold, Lyra of the Whispering Roots, but the journey within is far more perilous, for within these mouths the echoes of a forgotten world scream, and the shadow veil holds court. Lyra looked up, startled. The voice was resonant, ancient, and undeniably magical. It was not the eldest root, nor the moss whispers, nor the moon lamps. It was something else, something bound to this place. As she scanned the rock face above the cavern entrance, she saw it, a single, gnarled ancient tree, impossibly clinging to the bare rock, its roots sunk deep into hidden crevices. Its leaves, unlike the blight-ridden flora around it, were a deep, vibrant emerald, shimmering faintly with a hidden light. At its base, nestled amongst its roots, was a small, almost invisible opening, leading into a hidden grotto. A sense of profound wisdom emanated from the tree, a quiet power that seemed to push back against the oppressive gloom of the cavern entrance. This was no ordinary tree. This was the oracle of the verdant heart, the eldest root had explained, a living repository of the world's ancient memories, a watcher over the delicate balance of life. Lyra, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and awe, made her way to the grotto. As she approached, the vibrant leaves of the oracle tree seemed to rustle in welcome, and the air around her grew warmer, clearer. Flicker, sensing the benevolent magic, pulsed happily, its light a steady beacon. She stepped into the grotto. It was a small circular chamber, its walls covered in luminous moss that cast a soft green glow. In the center, a pool of crystal-clear water shimmered, reflecting the green light. And hovering above the pool like a wisp of mist given form, was a luminous, ethereal figure. It was tall and slender, composed entirely of swirling green light, with eyes that held the wisdom of ages. "Welcome, Lyra of the Whispering Roots," the oracle's voice resonated in her mind, gentle yet powerful. "I have watched your journey. The shadow veil grows bold indeed." "Oracle," Lyra managed, her voice hushed with reverence. "The Aegis withers, the blight spreads, the moon lamps led me here, to the Whisper Mouth Caverns. What is the shadow veil? How can I stop it?" The oracle's luminous form seemed to shimmer, and images began to swirl in the pool of water. The shadow veil is not merely a blight child. It is a hunger, an ancient imbalance. Long ago, when the world was young, light and shadow were intertwined, a necessary dance. But a fracture occurred, a tear in the fabric of balance. A part of the primordial shadow, instead of fading, began to consume. It sought to become all, to absorb all light, all magic. The images in the pool showed a cosmic dance. Then a sudden rip, a gaping void that began to swallow stars. The Aegis, your veil's protection, is not merely a shield. It is a living extension of the verdant heart, a network of life magic that nourishes and defends. The shadow veil has found a weakness, a subtle fissure in the ancient weave, and it is slowly siphoning the Aegis' power, draining its lifeblood, much as it drains the very roots of this world. Lyra felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. So it is truly ancient, then. Can it be stopped? The oracle's eyes, like emeralds catching starlight, fixed on her. It can, but not by force. The shadow veil cannot be fought with swords or fire, for it is essence. It must be Idra balanced. Its hunger must be sated, not with life, but with something it cannot consume, something that will seal the fissure and restore the flow of the verdant heart. The images in the pool shifted again, showing a single, radiant flower, glowing with an inner light, growing on the precipice of a dark abyss. Deep within the Whispermouth caverns, where the shadow veil's influence is strongest, there blooms the sun petal bloom. It is a flower of pure, untainted starlight, born from the last vestiges of a dying sun that once shone in the deepest abyss. Its light is anathema to the shadow veil, for it cannot be absorbed, only reflected. You must retrieve a single petal from the sun petal bloom. Only then can the fissure be sealed and the Aegis be restored. Lyra stared at the image of the radiant flower, a tiny beacon of hope in a sea of darkness. But the caverns, the shadow veil, how can I survive within it? The oracle shimmered, and from the luminous, moss-covered walls, a single, smooth, obsidian dark stone detached itself and floated towards Lyra. It was cool to the touch, and seemed to absorb all light, yet it pulsed with a faint internal warmth. This is a fragment of the Nightstone, the oracle explained. It draws in the shadow veil's essence, allowing passage without being entirely consumed. Its magic is temporary, a fragile shield, but you will also need another guide, one who knows the paths of the deep earth, who understands the whispers of forgotten light. The oracle's gaze shifted to Flicker, who had been hovering near Lyra, its light steady and bright. Your companion, Flicker, is more than a simple sprite. It carries a spark of the sun petal bloom's own light, passed down through generations of its kind. It will guide you, and its light will be your strength when the Nightstone falters. But beware. The caverns are a labyrinth, and the shadow veil will twist your mind, show you your deepest fears, lure you with false hopes. You must trust only your heart and the unwavering. Lyra clutched the Nightstone, its chilling coolness a stark contrast to Flicker's warmth. She looked from the oracle's wise, ancient eyes to the impenetrable darkness of the Whispermouth caverns. The task was clear, perilous, and utterly hers. The fate of the Aegis, of her home, now truly rested on her shoulders, and on the strength of a tiny sprite and a fragment of Nightstone. She was ready. The true challenge lay ahead, in the heart of the shadow veil itself. The air within the Whispermouth caverns was not merely dark. It was a living, breathing absence of light, a tangible weight that pressed in from all sides. Lyra took a deep breath, the metallic tang of damp rock filling her lungs. Flicker, a beacon of defiant warmth, zipped ahead, his light pushing back the immediate gloom, casting dancing shadows that seemed to writhe and stretch with every flutter of his wings. The entrance, a jagged maw in the mountainside, swallowed them whole. Sounds echoed strangely here, the drip of unseen water, a distant, mournful sigh that might have been the wind, or something far older. Lyra held the Nightstone tight, unin. Its coolness seeped through her palm, a constant chilling reminder of the task. As they ventured deeper, the faint, silver-blue glow of the stone began to assert itself, a counterpoint to Flicker's golden warmth. It didn't illuminate. It merely revealed the surrounding darkness, making it feel less absolute, more defined. The path beneath their feet was uneven, slick with unseen moisture. Lyra moved cautiously, her senses heightened. Every rustle, every faint whisper prickled at her nerves. Flicker, usually so boisterous, was subdued. His chirps softer, more inquisitive than playful. He'd dart into narrow crevices, his light a tiny probe, before returning to hover near Lyra's shoulder, a silent reassurance. They encountered their first true challenge not long after. The cavern widened into a vast echoing chamber, its ceiling lost in the inky blackness above. Here the air grew colder, and the shadows seemed to detach themselves from the walls. Wisps of darkness, like half-formed thoughts, began to swirl around them, drawn to Flicker's light. They were not solid, but they tugged at Lyra's resolve, whispering doubts into her mind. "You are too small, too weak. The Aegis will fall." Lyra squeezed her eyes shut for a moment, then opened them, focusing on Flicker. His light flickered, but held steady. She raised the nightstone. Its silver-blue glow intensified, pulsing faintly. The whispers faltered, recoiling from the stone's cool radiance. The shadowy tendrils hissed, dissolving back into the greater darkness. The oracle's words echoed. The nightstone holds the essence of ordered night, not the chaos of encroaching shadow. It was a shield, a ward. Lyra felt a surge of confidence. She was not alone, and she was not powerless. Days blurred into an endless cycle of darkness and cautious progress. Lyra learned to navigate by the shifting light of the nightstone and Flicker. She learned to discern the subtle differences in the cavern air, to trust the faint vibrations of the earth beneath her feet. They passed through tunnels that narrowed to claustrophobic squeezes, over chasms that yawned with unseen depths, and through chambers where strange, crystalline formations glowed with an eerie phosphorescence, making the shadows dance like specters. Food was scarce, her provisions dwindling. Lyra rationed carefully, sharing crumbs with Flicker, who seemed to subsist on light and pure determination. The true strain, however, was on her spirit. The constant oppressive darkness weighed on her, trying to seep into her thoughts, to extinguish her hope. Moments of despair would creep in, moments where she questioned if she was truly capable, if the Aegis was already lost. But then she would look at Flicker, his tiny form radiating unwavering courage, or feel the cool, steady thrum of the nightstone, and she would push on. One evening, or what she perceived as evening, after hours of silent trekking, they reached a place where the very stone seemed to weep shadow. The cavern walls here were slick, not with water, but with a tar-like darkness that seemed to slowly ooze. The air grew thick and heavy, pressing down on them. This was it, Lyra knew. This was the true Shadow Veil. Flicker, usually so vibrant, now struggled. His golden light, though still present, seemed muted, swallowed by the profound gloom. He hovered closer to Lyra, his tiny body trembling slightly. The nightstone, however, flared with a cold, almost desperate brilliance. It was reacting to something, growing colder, yet more alive in her hand. Before them, the path ended abruptly at the edge of a vast, circular abyss. No bottom was visible, only an endless, swirling vortex of absolute blackness that seemed to pull at the very light around them. From its depths emanated a low, guttural hum that vibrated through Lyra's bones, a sound that spoke of ancient hunger and slow decay. This was the source, she realized with a chilling certainty. This was where the encroaching darkness bled into the world. And there, suspended precariously over the abyss, on a slender, crystalline spire that jutted from the opposite side, was a faint, yet unmistakable, silver-blue shimmer. It was the other half of the nightstone, trapped within a prison of solid shadow, pulsing with a weak, desperate light, like a dying star. "Flicker," Lyra whispered, her voice hoarse. "It's there." Flicker chirped, a sound of awe mixed with fear. He darted forward, then recoiled, as if touching an invisible barrier. The air around the abyss crackled with malevolent energy. Lyra took a step closer to the edge. The hum intensified, filling her mind with fractured thoughts, images of the Aegis consumed by eternal night, of her friends and family fading into shadow. Doubt, sharp and cruel, pierced her heart. "You cannot cross." A voiceless whisper slithered into her mind. "You cannot reach it. This is the end. Worse." She fell to her knees, the weight of the darkness almost crushing her. Her nightstone grew cold, so cold it burned. Flicker landed on her shoulder, pressing his tiny body against her cheek, his warmth a fragile anchor in the icy grip of despair. He chirped again, a determined, defiant sound. Lyra looked at him, at his unwavering light, and then down at the nightstone in her hand. It pulsed, a steady, rhythmic beat against the chaos. She remembered the oracle's words, only when reunited can the shadow veil be drawn back, and the balance restored. She wasn't meant to fight the darkness with brute force. She was meant to complete the balance. She closed her eyes, focusing on the cool energy of the stone, on Flicker's persistent warmth. She pushed back against the encroaching despair, refusing to let it consume her. Her fear was real, but so was her purpose. When she opened her eyes, a faint path shimmered into existence across the abyss, a bridge of pure, cold starlight, barely visible against the swirling blackness. It was not a physical path, but a manifestation of the Nightstone's power, a bridge of ordered night, repelling the chaos. It was precarious, shimmering, and seemed to waver with every beat of the abyss's dark hum. "We have to go," Lyra said, her voice firm, rising above the whispers. Flicker nodded, his light flaring with renewed determination. Stepping onto the starlight bridge was like walking on frozen air. Each step was an act of faith. The hum of the abyss grew louder, rattling her teeth, trying to shatter her concentration. Shadowy hands, unseen but felt, clawed at her ankles, trying to pull her down into the void. Lyra clutched the nightstone, its light now radiating outward, creating a small, protective sphere around her. Flicker flew in tight circles around her head, his light adding to the shield, intercepting the more aggressive shadow tendrils that tried to wrap around her. The journey across felt endless. Her muscles ached, her mind screamed for release, but she kept her gaze fixed on the other half of the nightstone, a distant beacon of hope. The crystalline spire it rested on seemed to shimmer with an internal struggle, the light of the stone battling the solid shadow that encased it. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Lyra reached the spire. It was cold, so intensely cold that her fingers ached just from being near it. The other half of the nightstone was embedded deep within the shadow crystal, its silver blue light struggling to break free. She could feel its essence, a twin to the one in her hand, yearning for reunification. As she reached out, a surge of pure, concentrated darkness erupted from the abyss, coalescing into a grotesque, towering form directly behind the spire. It was a shadow wraith, larger and more terrifying than anything she had ever imagined, its eyes twin pits of void, its form shimmering with raw, malevolent power. It was the Guardian, the living embodiment of the Shadow Veil's resistance. "You trespass." Its voice boomed, not with sound, but with a direct assault on her mind, freezing her very thoughts. "You cannot undo what has been wrought. This darkness is eternal." Lyra froze, her hand hovering inches from the trapped stone. The wraith raised a shadowy claw, preparing to strike. Panic threatened to overwhelm her. She was a small girl, armed with a fragment of stone and a tiny sprite. How could she possibly fight this ancient evil? Then Flicker, with a scream of pure incandescent rage, launched himself at the shadow wraith. His light, concentrated into a blinding beam, struck the wraith's chest. The creature recoiled with a hiss, its form momentarily distorted, but the attack was like a pinprick against its vastness. It merely swatted at Flicker with contempt, sending him spiraling back towards Lyra, dazed but unharmed. "No!" Lyra cried, catching Flicker as he tumbled. She looked at the wraith, at the defiant tiny sprite in her hand, and a new kind of fire ignited within her. Not a fire of anger, but a fierce, protective determination. She would not let this creature win. She would not let it extinguish Flicker's light, or the light of the Aegis. She held her nightstone aloft, focusing all her will, all her hope, all her love for Flicker and her home, into its cool pulsing core. The oracle's words reverberated. The nightstone holds the essence of ordered night. It was not just an object, it was a symbol, a key to balance. The shadow wraith laughed, a sound that twisted the very fabric of reality. "Your fragment is naught but a speck against my power." "No," Lyra whispered, her voice surprisingly steady. "It is half of something greater, and together we are stronger than you know." With a surge of strength, she slammed her nightstone against the shadow crystal encasing the other half. It was a desperate, intuitive act. The moment they touched, a blinding flash of silver blue light erupted, not outward, but inwardly, into the heart of the shadow crystal. The wraith screamed, a sound of pure agony, as the light from the joined stones began to spread, consuming the shadow crystal from within. The cold, dark energy that fueled the wraith began to waver, its form flickering like a dying flame. The two halves of the nightstone clicked into place with an audible gythrum, a sound that resonated through Lyra's very soul. They didn't merely fit together, they fused, becoming one seamless, perfectly balanced sphere of silver-blue light. It pulsed with an incredible power, radiating a cold, yet profoundly comforting, light that pushed back the encroaching darkness with undeniable force. The shadow wraith shrieked, its form unraveling. The tendrils of darkness that made up its body writhed and dissolved, pulled back into the abyss as if by an invisible current. The hum from the abyss faltered, then died, replaced by a profound echoing silence. The starlight bridge, now unnecessary, dissolved into shimmering motes of light. The abyss itself began to change. The swirling blackness at its core receded, revealing, slowly, a deep, crystalline pool that pulsed with the same silver-blue light as the newly whole nightstone. It was not darkness but a source of pure, ordered night, a cosmic balance point. The shadow veil, the oozing darkness on the walls, retreated, as if pulled by an unseen hand. The oppressive weight in the air lifted. The chilling cold softened, becoming merely cool. The Whispermouth caverns began to transform, the air purifying, the sounds becoming less menacing, more natural. Lyra held the reunited nightstone, its cool weight a solid comfort in her hands. It no longer burned, but hummed, with a gentle, steady power. It was whole. The balance was restored. Flicker, his light now shining brighter than ever, zipped around her head, chirping with unrestrained joy. He landed on her shoulder, nudging her cheek. "We did it, Lyra! We did it!" Lyra laughed, a sound that felt foreign and wonderful in the newly cleansed air of the cavern. Tears, not of fear, but of profound relief and triumph, streamed down her face. She looked at the glowing pool, at the now benign caverns, and then at the nightstone. Its work here was done. The journey back through the Whispermouth caverns was a stark contrast to their fearful descent. The path was clear, illuminated by a soft ethereal glow that emanated from the very stone. The air was clean, fresh. The mournful sighs were gone, replaced by the gentle whisper of underground streams. Lyra and Flicker walked with a lightness in their steps, their hearts full. As they emerged from the cavern's maw, the world outside greeted them with a brilliant dawn. The sky above the Aegis was a tapestry of pinks, oranges and purples, the shadows of night retreating before the triumphant light of the rising sun. The encroaching darkness that had plagued the lands was gone. The trees stood tall and green, the rivers sparkled, and a gentle breeze carrying the scent of morning dew rustled through the leaves. Lyra gasped, taking in the sight of her home, vibrant and alive once more. Flicker sipped into the air, dancing in the sunlight, his golden light merging with the dawn. They made their way back to the Oracle's sacred grove, the reunited nightstone held carefully in Lyra's hands. The Oracle, sitting serenely beneath the ancient moonpetal tree, seemed to sense their approach. Her ancient eyes, usually so heavy with concern, now held a deep knowing peace. "You have returned," the Oracle said, her voice a soft murmur, like leaves rustling in a gentle breeze. "And you have brought the balance with you." Lyra approached, offering the nightstone. It pulsed gently in her hands, radiating its silver-blue light. "The shadow veil is drawn back," she said, her voice filled with quiet awe. The other half, it was in the heart of the darkness. The Oracle took the nightstone, her fingers brushing Lyra's. The stone settled perfectly in her palm, its light casting a beautiful glow on her wise face. "You have achieved what few dared to attempt, young Lyra. You have faced the deepest fears and emerged with unwavering light." She looked at Flicker, who was now perched on Lyra's shoulder, preening with pride. "And you, little sprite, have proven that even the smallest flame can banish the greatest shadow." Flicker chirped, happily, nudging Lyra's ear. "The Aegis is safe," the Oracle continued, her gaze sweeping across the recovering landscape. "The balance between day and night, light and shadow, is restored. The nightstone will once again rest here, a constant reminder of the ordered night, and of the courage it took to make it whole. Lyra felt a profound sense of accomplishment, but also a quiet humility. She was no longer just the young girl who tended moon-petal flowers. She had faced the darkness, both external and internal, and found strength she never knew she possessed. "What happens now?" Lyra asked, looking at the oracle. The oracle smiled, a rare, gentle curve of her lips. "Now, Lyra, you continue to grow. You have learned that true strength lies not in brute force, but in courage, in unwavering hope, and in the wisdom to understand balance. The Aegis will always need guardians, those who understand its delicate harmony. And you, Lyra, have proven yourself to be one of them." Lyra looked at Flicker, who chirped in agreement. She had a purpose beyond tending flowers, a greater understanding of her world and her place within it. The memory of the oppressive darkness would always be with her, a stark reminder of what could be lost, but also of the power of light, courage, and hope. As the sun climbed higher, bathing the Aegis in golden warmth, Lyra felt a deep peace settle within her. The Nightstone, resting safely with the oracle, pulsed faintly, a silent guardian of the newly restored balance. The Aegis was safe, its vibrant life returning in full splendor. And Lyra, the girl who once feared the shadows, now understood that even in the deepest night, there was always an unwavering light to be found, especially when she carried it within her own heart, and beside her, the steadfast glow of her tiny friend, Flicker. Her adventure had ended, but her journey as a guardian of the Aegis had only just begun. She knew, deep in her heart, that she was ready for whatever shadows might one day rise again, for she had faced the greatest darkness, and brought back the light. It was time to rest, and let the Aegis heal, and dream of a world made whole.